Performers Pod. Today I'm with one of my favorite people. I haven't seen you since the last time in Berlin, and
Too
yeah,
long since we've
yeah,
seen each other.
Dion Rossi. I'm so excited to see you again.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like when the porn world was fully back and operational before COVID, like I felt like I saw you like 2, 3 times a year.
Yeah, I know. We used to hang out like quite regularly, but now that travel is such a
Totally
luxury.
gone. Yeah, I think you're actually one of the first people I met in European porn. I think I met you my first day in Germany.
That's so nice.
Yeah. I felt like I was introduced to like all the right people. Like I felt like I was introduced to Poppy, I was introduced
Yeah.
to Rue and Kali and a few other people. And I'm just like, oh wow, these are all people who are still actively making stuff and still doing really cool things. So
Yeah.
I felt like I
That's
got
so nice as well, because like my first day in Germany, I met Parker. I
mm,
don't know. Yeah, if you ever ended up meeting him.
hmm
But yeah, my first day was Parker met me like straight out of the airport and we'd never met before. So I feel like it's like this nice little cycle of porn performers supporting each other in their
I,
like immigration.
I feel like there's so much of that in like Berlin porn. Like the first time I went to the festival, I was a filmmaker in Focus. So Jurgen picked me up from the airport. And then he's just like, oh, I will give you a tour of Berlin on the way
Oh,
to your
nice.
hotel. So I like saw all this stuff like 20 minutes into getting into Berlin. So I'm like, oh, I saw the wall. I saw this. I saw that. So
Yeah, that's right. You came here as the important person.
yeah, I held out on my getting my passport for too long. So that's kind of what it was, where I'm just like, oh, I'll just do it next year. And then eventually I really needed to. So when did you move to Berlin? I know you're originally Australian.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do
Um,
much stuff in Australia, or did you really start pursuing porn full time in Germany?
No, I definitely started in Australia. Um, so I started for this um like porn company called Girls Out West. It was
Oh,
like a
we
very
we just actually had someone on from there. Do you know
yeah,
Lainey Day?
yeah, I know Lainey.
Yeah.
It's a really small scene. So I started doing that kind of like girl on girl stuff, and
Mhm.
then I actually got into making my own content and selling it on ManyVids because of the people that I met doing porn in Australia. Like it's really supportive, and so I met, I don't know if you know, like Kim Comes
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
yeah, and Petite Nymphette, like all of these really cool people that were like, you know, you should really be monetizing this. Like, don't just do it for someone else. And so yeah, that's how I got my start. And I would say Berlin is where I started getting into the more creative and queer side of porn, not just like uh, the more mainstream kind of making money in between escorting bookings.
Yeah, it seems like Australia, it's like escorting is definitely the main thing there, where porn is just more
Yeah.
secondary, which is so hard to realize for people in the United States, because here it's the exact opposite, where it's like, oh yeah, porn's totally legal. Escorting is this like, you know,
It's still a taboo, I think,
hmm
with a lot of US sex workers.
for sure.
Even sex workers that are like doing the sugaring thing and they still meet someone off the internet and they still have sex with someone as soon as they meet them for money. But I think that word escorting for people in the US still has that like scary thing.
I think it definitely does. And even just the idea of a brothel. I mean, I think we have like two in the United States, where I've dated way too many Australians for being someone who's never gone to Australia. But I felt like I had so many partners who are just like, oh yeah, you just go to the brothel for the weekend, you make your money, and then you go home.
Yes, you dated I don't want to say their name because I don't know their like name that they use. But I know that you dated like a friend of mine
Yeah.
who did sex work.
I I dated way too many Australians. It was like such a
Yeah.
problem. Like that was my early 20s, where it was like, oh yeah, I'm getting a girl from Melbourne. And then, oh, I broke up with her. Oh, I'm getting another girl from now Sydney, or now like wherever else in Australia, where it's just kind of, yeah.
You're very popular in Australia.
I just can't get on a plane for like 20 hours to go to Australia. I'm just like, it's too similar. I'm like, I don't want to go that far just to have it be another variation of like mostly white people, where I'm just like,
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm like, it's too far to go for too much of the same.
Yeah, America light, I guess you would call it.
I like to think of it as like British Texas a lot, because like
Yeah.
arguably there's things that you do that are way more American than America.
Really?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. Like
Mhm.
some of the food there, like just kind of like the way of drinking. I feel like it's just more.
Yeah, the drinking is really like a lot. It takes a while to get used to, I think, if you're not Australian when you come here. I was trying to explain, my partner is Chilean,
Mhm.
and I was trying to explain that like at our football matches, we had all these riots because football matches go for 90 minutes
Mhm.
and they had a limit. They said you can only drink 30 beers per match.
Wait, individually?
Yeah, per person.
Wait, what?
And people got really angry about it.
30. That's a beer every 3 minutes.
Yeah, right?
Wow.
Drinking is a big thing in Australia, and I think it's really shocking for most people who are not from there. Like, it's really, I mean, I grew up in Japan. I lived there
Mhm.
until I was
Yeah.
13. So, Australian drinking, I'm kind of like used to it. It's similar. But then when I came to Europe, I was like, oh my God, you don't drink until you pass out? That's weird.
So you grew up in Japan until you were like 13, then you moved back to Australia?
Yeah, so I moved there when I was starting high school.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
I'm sure that had to be a pretty big jump.
Oh, yeah, it was. I was not happy about it. Um,
So there's some alternate reality where you just stay in Tokyo the whole time and you're making fetish porn in Tokyo.
that's probably a big part of why my parents like moved me to Australia. I would be making fetish porn and dating some guy with like two missing fingers.
But I mean, you were pretty young. You probably couldn't get into that much trouble, right?
No, I mean, you can't really get into that much trouble as a kid in Japan anyway, because it's so safe.
Mhm, yeah, definitely. That's always the vibe I got out of there. Yeah,
Mm.
actually, I had a performer from Tokyo on the podcast. It's just so interesting how the porn scene's just so different there. It's like so insular and really just until very recently, just entirely run by studios.
And you worked there, didn't you?
I did a screening there. I didn't shoot anything.
Oh.
I got some really cheap flights that I was able to do a screening tour with Queer Porn Americana, and I was in the Midwest at the time in the States, and I found a flight that was round trip to Japan for $400.
Amazing.
So I was like, oh, I need to do this right now. And then I had
Yeah.
a friend there who's like, oh yeah, you can stay on my floor. So I'm like, hell yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. I
I'm
just
very
found
proud.
out I was very allergic to cherry blossoms. I did not know that. So it
Oh,
was
but
like in
you
the
went
middle of it.
through. Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah. Completely in the middle. Felt horrible for a few days, but like it was so pretty and it was just such a great experience. I just feel like just the size of Tokyo is just so sprawling and just really
Mhm.
blows your mind compared to really anywhere else in the world, at least that I've been.
I think it is the biggest city in the world,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is. Yeah, I think it's like 28 million or something, which is just,
50 million.
yeah, just so
Yeah,
crazy.
Osaka's the second biggest, and that's 25 million. So yeah, or 20 million. I don't know. I don't want to go on record as if I get it wrong.
I don't think anyone's coming here for like population updates, hopefully.
That's hopefully. Oh my God, you never know.
So when did you get into porn in Australia? How old were you?
I was I think I was 22.
Okay.
Yeah, it was fairly young, I think. Basically, I started doing sex work around that age, like 22.
Hmm.
I had basically some financial problems, and a friend told me that you could make like 1,000 Australian, so like 500 euro in a day if
Hmm.
you worked in a brothel. And I was like, oh, that sounds really cool. I'll give it a go. And if I hate it, I can just quit.
Yeah.
Um, Turned out I didn't hate it.
I feel like there's a certain inclination of the girls who are like, oh yeah, I want to try that. Like, you're
Yeah.
pretty, you kind of want to. Like, that's how I felt about camming, where I'm like, the first $20 was
Exactly.
cool, but I was also like, oh wow, this is kind of hot.
Exactly. There's
Mhm.
also that like intrigue part of it. And the girls at the brothel I worked at, they all worked for Girls Out West, and they were like, oh, if you do this, it's a guaranteed amount per day, and you only work with one person, and it's a cute girl.
I can see how you were very easily sold. You were like, okay, I guess
Yeah.
I'm doing porn now.
Pretty much. I was like, oh, if I get paid to have sex with a hot girl, I'm pretty much into it.
I'm assuming you were doing Lainey explained it as like just like natural girls in the bush like fucking essentially. Is that kind of the porn you were doing for the most part?
Yeah, it's very much like the girl next door kind of cutesy scenario where you're both like, oh, we're both alone in this beautiful piece of nature. Why don't we just go down on each other and like
I love that like all I feel like all Australian porn I see is like very much that. It's always like we're in nature and we both have a bunch of hair and it's just part
Mm.
of it.
Yeah, big bushes are just really in Australian porn. I'm not sure like how that happened, but
It is really unique that there's like a specific look for Australian porn though. Like because you're only I think the second Australian performer I've had on.
Mm.
And like the more that I talk to Australian porn performers and look at Australian porn, it's like there's such a specific look, and there's a lot of countries that don't really have a specific look for their porn.
Yeah, Australian porn is very much like happy-go-lucky white girls with
Mhm.
like really big pubes and like natural hair and small titties.
Yeah, like 100%. So I'm assuming you were doing that for a while and you just kind of wanted to be more creative. You started doing your own stuff.
Yeah, yeah, I wanted to do my own stuff, and kind of realizing, like you said, there's a very specific look with Australian porn, and I don't know anyone who looks like that apart from me and other porn performers. Like my friends are not just white, skinny, cis, straight passing girls.
Mhm.
And when I was recommending my friends for these companies, and these companies were like, oh, they're too alternative. They have like, two tattoos, or they have big boobs, or like they have a scar on their thigh, and all of this stuff. So that kind of made me start looking at creating my own stuff or working with other people that were less body negative.
Mhm.
I don't know, like it's such a hard thing, because I don't want to say that queer porn is more moral because we have different bodies.
Yeah.
Because if someone's just into like super generic looking people humping each other, then like that's what they're into. I don't want to shame that. Um,
Yeah. I'm just like so confused by the whole Australian porn. Like, is that thought of as just generally hot in Australian culture? Or is it just specifically a porn thing?
I mean, it's a hard thing because Australia is, I mean, I haven't lived in Australia in 7 years,
Hmm.
but it's a very white, cis, patriarchal country. And God, I mean, sorry, I'm taking so long to answer this.
You're totally fine. I mean, this is what this podcast is for, long-winded things about porn. So you're totally welcome to it. It also feels like there's a lot of Australian performers who almost have to move out of Australia to become really
Yeah.
successful and really do their own thing, like Angela White, for example.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Angela is amazing. I think she's so cool. She actually did women's studies at the same university as
Oh,
me.
really?
Yeah. So did oh God, what's her name? She does fetish
Is it
stuff.
Zara Stardust?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's
There's a
amazing.
few of us that did women's studies at the same university. Um wow.
That's the pipeline.
That's the gateway. But yeah, Australia is like still very narrow and
Hmm.
patriarchal in its standards. Like Angela would be considered too big
Yeah, which is so bizarre to
for
me
pretty
that
much anything in Australia, which is insane because she's like a
the
very
biggest like
average,
porn star in the world now.
biggest porn star in the world, and also
Yeah.
like quite a slim lady with big
Yeah.
boobs. Like, but she would be
It's
considered way too big to get a job with any of the Australian companies. Like, it's just so
it's
narrow and so it like adheres to a beauty standard that I don't even think exists anymore.
yeah, it's just very strange that that's like
Yeah.
what becomes Australian porn that's being put into the world. Like truly, like I can't think of another country that has that uniform of a aesthetic for porn. I mean, most other countries have, oh yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that's being made here. Maybe Berlin with like some art porn that you're like, oh, that's probably not going to be made anywhere else.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's just like
Although I
really
guess even
unique.
art porn really has its own standard. Like, then it's just like, a size 10 brunette with natural tits. And they're like, oh, we're so out there letting these like chubby ladies be desirable. And it's like, we're still skinny and like white and cis.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, that's why like the ethical porn terms trip me up so much because like even if
Right.
you're doing inclusive casting, you don't know what the cast is going through. You don't know what the crew is dealing with. Like I just feel
Yeah.
like that's such a hard thing for me to get sold on, and like that like porn for women thing also trips me up where I'm just like women can be into all sorts of things. Who says this crazy gangbang that this woman's getting off on isn't for her, you know?
Yeah, I feel like this kind of thing, like when I first moved to Berlin and I was first exposed to these
When did you move to Berlin?
about 6 years ago, I think.
Okay.
And I remember being so excited by all these terms, it was like feminist porn and it was queer and it was alternative. But then you get involved with it and it definitely is. There's some incredible stuff happening. And I don't ever want to discount how amazing the stuff that's being made here is, and how
Hmm.
like there's a lot of really groundbreaking film, but at the same time there's a lot of mainstream porn that's just piggybacking off that.
Yeah, I
um
had Dante on from Berlin and he called it the
mm,
gentrification of porn there.
mm,
Where it's like these larger companies come in and they're like, oh, I see the creative thing you're doing and I'm just going to throw money at
yeah.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. Gentrification is a really good term for it. It's something that I did a panel at the Berlin Porn Film Festival
Mhm.
about 2 years ago, about the gentrification of the sex industry. And we had some sex workers come in from, they were trans street-based sex workers from Amsterdam, and they came in to talk about the work that they were doing, and Disco Tits was there as well.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. I think that was 3 years ago. I tried to go, but
Yeah.
the building was locked when I got there,
Oh
and I
no.
couldn't get in for some reason.
But it was really incredible hearing people talk about how the industry is really becoming this exclusive thing, when it's like, if you're someone who is doing sex work because you just need the money, it's almost like that's not enough anymore.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, you need to be groundbreaking, and you need to be pushing boundaries, and you need to be like championing your marginalized status. And these women that were working on Amsterdam were like, we just want to make $50. Like,
Yeah, I think I definitely saw it in the Bay Area when I first moved here. There were a lot of people moving to the Bay just to do porn, and there were a lot of people from backgrounds who were more privileged and wealthy, where it was almost viewed as a social clout thing when it was still on Tumblr and all that stuff, where it just felt like such a different thing. From my own reasons for getting into sex work was I couldn't get employed anywhere where I'm from because it was like super conservative. And during the recession in the state of Michigan, like I think our unemployment was like up to 15% because all the factories shut down. So I, as a trans person, couldn't get a job anywhere. So I
yeah,
was just like, oh, camming's the most accessible thing. That's why I'm doing it, you know? And then
yeah,
just moving here, there was just so many people here for so many different reasons. And it's just so different here now because it's really just kind of back to, oh yeah, if you're doing porn here, you're doing it to make money, you're doing it to survive, that sort of thing. Whereas I feel like it was so different at a time where I feel like these scenes that do pop up kind of do draw that in, where there's a lot more people who are coming to sex work for a lot of different reasons.
yeah, exactly.
And I
I
think that
think
energy is now in Berlin that used to be in SF.
I think that's a big responsibility that we have if we want to be creating queer porn that resonates with people and makes, if we're making porn because we want people to feel good about themselves, and we want people who are marginalized to be able to see themselves represented, and we want to have these screenings where we create community, which I do think is really important, we also have the responsibility to kind of balance that with like, how do we not push out
Mhm.
um people who are just doing sex work because they just want money?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like, that is such an important part of sex work, to not fall into respectability politics.
I think for sure. I feel like it's always, I think if you do have a platform in porn, I think it's your responsibility to try to use that to help
Mm.
people who are more marginalized, whether that's like doing something like a fundraiser from your films or screenings or whatever else. I just feel like there's needs to be some way to give back if you do have a platform, you
Yeah.
know? I just think, I mean, I guess it's a deeper question, but why do you do porn? Like, what do you really feel out of it? If you can pinpoint at one thing.
That's a really interesting question, because I think my answer pre and post COVID are so different. Before the pandemic, I would absolutely say the reason I do all of the queer porn that I did was because I really wanted people who were queer to see something that was hot, and I wanted them to get off, and I wanted, I mean, I'm like, I want people with different bodies to feel good about themselves, and I'm like a skinny white person.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's definitely a thing. But like you can want all that and be a skinny white Australian girl and still want to, contribute to that. And I feel like with stuff like Sluts for Sluts, it did. Like you did have a lot of different queer
It really
bodies
did. And
in
that
it.
was the whole point of Sluts for Sluts, was just to like make stuff that was fucking hot with different bodies
Mhm.
and to show stuff being sexy that wasn't really shown being sexy, like squishy bellies and like people grabbing into fat thighs and like brown bodies and trans bodies and all of this
Mhm.
stuff that I think we really did. And I know, like, even now I still meet people who say that the Sluts for Sluts stuff made an impact on them, which is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, we've screened with you guys so many times. I think we
Yeah.
did I have like a little poster on the wall that has you guys' name on it. I'm just like, I definitely have a deep place in my heart for what you guys are doing. I think for me, I just like that feeling of just connecting with other creative people and just being able to
Mm.
leave a set and be like, wow, we did a thing. We walked in here with no plans and then we put together everything and now we have a thing that's gonna go out into the world.
Oh my god, like Kendall dreaming.
Yeah, that was out of nowhere. Do you want to
Like
explain
out of
that?
nowhere.
Do you want to explain that?
Yeah. So
I feel like that's the most Dami I've ever gotten in my life. Like, do you want to explain what you did to that Kendall?
I don't even really know how that came up. I think I was just watching a lot of John Waters
Mhm.
and I had this Ken doll and I really wanted to do something different. And I think we were just joking about the doll and then we were like, let's just do it. Like, because why can't porn be hilarious?
Yeah, it
Like
was very hard to shoot that and not laugh. It was so hard. I was doing videography on it and it was so difficult not to laugh.
oh yeah. But I think like, and that when you say like, why do you do porn? I think that is why. Like, we had so much fun
Yeah.
and we made something that has been screened in so many cities, and people still approach, I'm sure they approach you as well and mention this movie, like this weird porn surrealist comedy that, God, I don't know, it was just so much fun and sexy. Like,
I I just feel like it's so weird that all these movies have second lives and they go on and really now with like the whole festival circuit, you can make a movie in your hometown in like a bedroom and then it's gonna go around the world. And you're just like, wow, now someone in Athens is watching it at a festival and being like, what the hell is this? Like it's just so crazy to think about because I always felt like my artistic goals growing up, it was so limited by just being like, oh, this is regional. Okay, maybe I can do something in Chicago someday. That's a big city. And now I feel like with this whole porn circuit, you can really make porn anywhere in the world and it can get out essentially anywhere and go kind of anywhere, which is just so cool and I think so special.
yeah. Yeah, it's a really fun medium for expressing different ideas about identity and politics and intimacy. But also, like, you say like, oh, I'm just from Michigan, but you know, there are so many amazing artists from Michigan that have been creating video art. Like, I don't know if you've seen this film, It Happened in Michigan.
Oh no, I have not. What is it?
Oh my God, let me get
I'm
the.
I'm shocked.
There's some really famous video artists that have come out of Michigan. And there's
Interesting.
also the slavery uh, history museum that's also,
Yeah, that's outside of Detroit. Yeah. Yeah,
and Eileen Wuornos is
there's
from
a lot
Michigan.
of who?
Eileen Wuornos is from Michigan.
She's actually we were born in the same hospital.
No.
Yeah, we're both from I was born in Grand Rapids, but I grew up in a city named Holland in Michigan. That's all like a mini Netherlands, but in the Midwest for some reason.
Crazy.
Yeah,
That's
it's
claim to fame.
yeah. We also have Dita Von Teese, which is a good one.
That's a good one. And
But
Hunter
then
is also from the same town as you, right?
who?
Hunter.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
from the same
we talked way too much about regional geography and streets and theaters where we're like no one other than people in our hometown will have any will know what this theater is, what this street is, but
All right, so
yeah.
this artist is called Cecilia Condit, and
Oh, I've heard of them.
yeah, and the film is possibly in Michigan, but then they
Okay.
also have a few others. I really think you should check her out. She's amazing.
Yeah, I definitely will. We definitely have some really great artists there, but we also have some really bad ones. Like Kid Rock is from Michigan, which is very unfortunate.
Ah.
Um, Oh, ICP, the Insane Clown Posse is from Michigan. So we have a lot of juggalos. That's kind of an issue. Like, that's a real issue I grew up with where we're like, you can't go to that side of the park. It's just juggalos.
Yeah. Is Kanye West from Michigan?
No, he's from Chicago. So I grew up where I'm from is about, if you follow the lake up, that's where I'm from. So it's like 2 hours maybe. So not very far, but yeah.
Although I do always like the more freak represent. Like I would be much more proud of like Insane Clown Posse and Eileen Warnos than like
See, the problem with Insane
Kanye
Clown
West.
Posse is we have to deal with juggalos as a real disturbance. So it's just like people who wear the face paint and they do you know Fago the pop, the soda?
Yeah.
So wow, that's a deep Michigan cut knowing Fago. So they're like covered in Fago and they
I
all
know
smell
the
like
people from Michigan for some reason.
yeah, I guess we do get out. You can't really stay there. So they like are covered in Fago and like body odor and like menthol cigarettes. So like that's how they smell.
Yeah.
So you just kind of avoid them. So it's been a real issue just there. So it's never really been a thing where it's like, oh yeah, hell yeah, juggalos. But there's been a few that have come on the podcast who didn't tell me until late on. They're like, yeah, ICP. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, we have some, I don't know. I think it's an interesting place to grow up. Creatively, like my hometown's really small, but there's a really strong music and art scene there. So I think you can definitely feel inspired to make stuff and it's really cheap. So I think that definitely helps. But I definitely think there's a thing about Michigan where it feels like you're so isolated that you don't ever feel like your art's going to get out. So until I really moved to California, I just never really had the vision to be like, oh, I can go to Europe and do stuff or go to Japan. It just like wasn't really in the mindset, you know?
Yeah.
Did you kind of feel the same thing with Australia in a way? Because I feel like it's fairly isolated as well. I mean, obviously, Michigan's just like 2 hours from a big city, but surrounded by farmland, all that sort of stuff. So it just doesn't feel like an accessible thing. Obviously, Australia, you're like a 15-hour flight from anywhere else, basically.
Yeah, definitely. It's super isolated, and I think at least for me, this was such a big part of moving to Australia because I never wanted to. Basically, what happened was my parents' work stopped paying for my school,
Mm.
and school in Australia is free. And I'm an Australian citizen. So my parents were like, all right, we're going to go to Australia and you can go to school for free. Like, lucky you. And I was just so angry. I was so, so angry because I didn't know anything about the country. And and to give you a like I grew up in Tokyo in the 90s.
Mhm.
Like lived in the red light district of Harajuku.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time there.
Yeah, exactly. So you
Hmm.
see like what I came from to moving to the outer suburbs of a small city in Australia. And I was just like furious all the time. And I think that really colored my experience of Australia being this very isolated country. And I think maybe I perceive it as a lot more isolated than it actually is. Um,
I mean, I don't
but
think you're wrong in perceiving that though. If you even just look at a map though, it's so far.
mm, very far away, very isolated, and very um, antiquated in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
But at the same time, not so isolated that it doesn't have any connection. You know, for example, you're saying you've dated a lot of people from Melbourne,
Hmm.
and a lot of people from Melbourne seem to know you. So it's geographically very isolated, yes, but culturally, I would say we're a lot more in tune with people from the US than
Yeah.
you would expect.
Yeah, I feel like there's a few countries that are all kind of on the same wavelength, like Canada, Australia, the UK, United
Yeah,
States,
exactly. And
even
the thing,
South Africa to a little bit.
weirdly, yes.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with social media is that even though we're days and days apart on a plane, we do feel quite close to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can definitely feel that.
Yeah.
So, did you just kind of have the desire to get out of Australia as soon as you could, or was it a thing of like I eventually need to get out, I just don't know when?
I think when I was younger, yes, I always wanted to get out as soon as possible, but I also was living in a part of the country that was, you know, very beautiful. It was in the rainforest.
Mm,
I lived in a part of Australia where the rainforest meets the ocean.
wow. So like
Super
Northern
beautiful.
Australia?
Yeah, the Northern Rivers. Maybe you
Hmm.
went to live more where they have the there's like a big gay festival there every year on New Year's.
I
It's really
I don't know
nice.
if I know about that. My partner really recently got into fishing and they were watching a fishing thing in like Northern Australia. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, being in the bay, apparently there's crab everywhere here, like Dungeness crab, and there's so much of it that you can catch up to 10 and it's just fine.
Wow, that's
So,
cool.
yeah, so for Christmas my partner was like, "Oh, I want to try this." So I'm like, "Okay, I will get you a fishing pole. That's what you really want." So, yeah, they were watching a video and it was like yeah, Northern Australia and just really realizing how close it is to like the rest of Oceania and everything and
Mm,
all those countries. I just didn't really, I guess I know on a map that they're close to it, but I just didn't really understand that it was like that tropical in Northern Australia and that culturally tied to that too.
yeah. Yeah, it's very, very tropical. And I think once I moved there, I had this real struggle of like, you can stay in this really beautiful place and just never travel because it's so good, or you can just force yourself to travel because otherwise you never will. It was kind of this do or die moment
Mhm.
that everything was so perfect that yeah, I guess I just thought if I don't do this now, I never will.
That's such
Yeah.
a big decision for like a 21, 22-year old. Like, that's so, I mean, I feel like that kind of comes up on this podcast a lot. Like, for most people in porn, like you have to make these like very drastic decisions at a very
Yeah.
young point in your life, and that you made that decision at that point. You're like, okay, I want to do this.
Yeah, I think if you're in somewhere that's really comfortable and you can be yourself and you can really like explore a lot of stuff, you have to really say to yourself, okay, am I going to travel or am I not? Because I'm not going to find anything better. I think it's almost easier if you're in a bit of a cultural wasteland, because then you have to leave.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like I talk to people who are like, oh yeah, I knew from age like 15 I have to go.
Yeah.
Honestly, I didn't think about leaving Michigan until like I went here for Pride. And then I was like, holy shit, I need to do this. Like, okay, I'll move here. If it's 6 months, that's great. We'll see what happens, you know? So when you did move to Germany, were you just like really driven to be like, okay, I want to really pursue porn full time and make stuff full time? Or was it more just trying to explore what it was all about?
No, I just met a really hot person that I wanted to be with, and I just decided to be with. Honestly, I wish it was something more deep than that. I just met a very, actually, I think maybe you met Frank.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just met Frank and I wanted to be with them, and they like played the ukulele and sang me love songs and like
That won you
were very
over.
attractive, and I decided to just move to Berlin to be with them. Um,
I mean, it all worked out. You're still there.
yeah, I'm still there. They went back to Australia and I stayed here. Um, but yeah, I moved for my pussy, and but I stayed for yeah, I don't know. I stayed for the community and the potential to be creative.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
can
I
totally.
definitely did not move for anything more deep than an attractive person.
So, like, were you watching specific porn or influenced by specific artists that really made you want to start producing your own stuff and get more involved in a more creative way, other than just being like, oh, this is the same as working the brothel for $100 for Australian bush porn, I guess I would call it.
I think what inspired me to do more artistic porn was never other pornographers or other sex workers. It was other filmmakers that I really fell in love with. So I, you know, as I said, like I'm a huge fan of John Waters.
Mhm.
Um, I really loved the film Poison. I really loved a lot of queer cinema, things like
Mhm.
Die Hard, all of this stuff. And I wanted to kind of do films like this, more like non more like non-mainstream, more things that were very trashy,
Mm.
very celebrating queer culture, and I love B movies, you know.
Yeah, you want
Um,
like a level of camp to it where you want it to
I
feel a
really
little
wanted
bit.
things that were very camp, and I am not the best actress in the world. Like I can act a little bit, but not so much. But I am comfortable being on film, and I am comfortable having sex on camera. So I thought, why not kind of create porn films that are like the kind of mainstream films that I
Mm.
really like? You know, like what happened with Kendall Dreaming.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
I
that's
wanted
totally a
to
John Waters-esque thing.
exactly. I wanted to make something that was very surreal and that was very queer and very camp. And sure, it has sex in it, but that's not really the point of the film.
Yeah,
And
it's
I
just part
think
of it.
that porn scene does not exist outside of Berlin. So why
No.
not take advantage of it?
I just feel like Berlin has changed what porn can mean so much,
Yeah.
where I just feel like I was so burnt out when I first went to Berlin. I was like so ready to give up on porn. I was so burnt out by American porn. Yeah, because it was all just like, oh, what's gonna sell? What's gonna make the most money?
Mm.
And that's like all I was hearing for literally, I think like 5 years. And then I got to Berlin and I was screening my film Fucking Against Fascism. And then I was like, and then someone was like, oh, there's another film called Fuck the Fascism. And in America, it's like, fuck, this person's gonna try to fight me or something. And then I
Basura
met up,
film?
yeah, and then I met up with them and they showed me their stuff. I'm like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And they're like, oh yeah, your stuff's cool too. And
I
like just this,
remember that because I was Basura's roommate
mm-hmm.
when we met you, and they were so excited that you came here, and they were
Yeah.
just like, okay, well, we have to make friends with this person.
I didn't know that. I'm so relieved with that though. Yeah, I genuinely think their shit's so cool. Like I show it to people so often where like anyone doesn't know anything about porn. I'm like, oh, you need to look at this now. It's them like
Yeah.
pissing on fascist graves. And I'm such a history nerd too, so that they like work all the historical stuff into their porn. So
Mm.
you also like learn about the fucked up shit that happened. It's just so cool to me, like overlapping activism, history, porn, direct
I
action. It's just
actually,
so cool.
I actually met my current partner doing a film with Basura. Um, we were doing this movie, and there's a statue in Berlin that we were all going to fuck on. And so we all got together and we were like vomiting on this statue and like talking about it was the Bismarck statue, you
Yeah,
know, which is like this completely fucked historical figure. And there's a monument in Berlin to Bismarck that shows
it's so fucked up.
him standing on the throat of a lion reading to him, and it like celebrates the idea of Germany bringing knowledge to Africa. It's awful. And I remember we were just like destroying this monument and like looking at Pancha, like we weren't together yet, but it
Mhm.
was like a really romantic moment. Just like pissing and like throwing eggs on this statue and then fucking on it. And I was like, okay, this is the person I'm gonna be with for the next 5 years.
It's so amazing. It's just like I feel like there's so much in history that people just don't know that you
Mm,
just have to research. And like even with that thing where I was like, oh, I want to learn more about that. I went down a Wikipedia hole and it's like, oh yeah, that's where Hitler wanted the Grand Stadium for his
yeah.
whole like new Reich thing that was going to conquer the world. And it's like that shit still exists there. Like, why wouldn't you just tear every part of that down? I just don't understand in the least amount. I don't know. I'm just particularly
And that's
like World
why
War
it's
One
such
and
an
World War
important
Two
project.
history. It's just so interesting to me and how it shaped so much of our modern world and how much of this stuff just still exists. It's so wild to me.
And it's crazy that this is a part of the sex industry, that
Mhm.
we're making porn that is for people to jack off to, but there's a hidden message in it. Like
I don't know how hidden it is.
not even hidden, but I think it's amazing that like nowhere else but Berlin
Mhm.
would you make a porno about destroying monuments to colonialism.
Yeah. In the United States, it's just so much about completely about money with porn, where
Yeah.
it's like, well, we can't have this kind of person in porn because then people won't buy it, and then all of our companies are going to go under, and we're all going to die. Essentially, like that's how the mindset is. So going to Berlin, just being like, oh yeah, we're just going to do whatever, and
Yeah.
oh yeah, we're going to piss on some graves. Let's do it. Just like this is so fucking cool and so punk and like not even like some sort of fake thing that's like, oh yeah, we're doing this for clout. Not at all. It's just like, yeah, we're gonna inform some people and do and piss on
Yeah.
this person's grave because fuck them.
Yeah.
Like
It's
I
like
love that.
maybe we'll inform some people, but we're just gonna do it anyway.
Yeah. It just yeah. I feel like I could rant about them for so long, but even like what even like more polished like European porn, like Four Chambers is it's just so different than anything in the United
Mhm.
States, where it's like a straight up Nine Inch Nails music video that they're like, oh, it's porn though. Like that's 100%. I did a scene for them. I got it back. I'm like, this is 100% a Nine Inch Nails video from like the early 90s.
Amazing.
It's just so great. But I don't know. I just feel like that's what gave me so much hope to continue doing porn. Because
Mm.
coming there, I was just so like, oh my God, I hate all of this shit. I hate like me being like, hey, can you not call trans women she-males? People are like, you're gonna destroy porn. You're so radical. And
Yeah.
and then I come here and it's like, oh no, like we're pissing on graves and shit and like telling people about how human zoos used to exist and how fucked up that is. I'm just like, it's the real stuff, you know?
Yes, the real deal. But how is it for you, I guess, because like you do have this really incredible radical side to your work, and yeah, as someone who's like very strongly against using slurs to define yourself in the industry, how do you, if you don't mind me asking, how do you really balance that um radical side with coming back to the US and having to do the more mainstream work and market yourself?
I think it's using even my non-political porn to give back to a certain way. Like
Mhm.
when the red light district shut down in Amsterdam, I did a thing where I screened my last film there right before the last Berlin Porn Film Festival. That was like fully operational. So I think 2019. So I'm like, if you donate, I'll just give you a free movie. Like
Yeah.
I don't care. You can have the file, go for it. Or like I donated to Black Lives Matter, Trans Lifeline, UN Refugee Fund, and Planned Parenthood in the States for fucking against fascism. So I think it's like, even if you don't have these huge things that are overtly doing something as radical as being like, we're gonna try to like take down a statue or whatever, which I think is fucking amazing. I think there's little ways you can do that. And also just like not being quiet about shit and just being real with your own life experience, you know? I think for me, that's how I've been able to do it. But I don't know. I feel like I got blacklisted by most of the companies that are still using slurs or still were using slurs. So I guess that kind of helped in a way for it not to get too convoluted, where they're like, oh, why are you speaking out against these slurs when you're getting marketed as such? And yeah, it's not really happening that much in trans porn for companies, at least. So I
Mm.
think that makes me really just hopeful about the future. I don't know if you follow at AVN this last year, the biggest film of the night, who won Grand Reel, was a trans film.
Okay, cool.
And there was like really no backlash at all.
Yeah,
So
okay.
it just makes me feel really hopeful about kind of what the future is for trans people in mainstream porn, where I don't feel like trans people are as limited as they once were.
That's really cool. Yeah, I really, as much as I love all the radical stuff that we do, I think being able to make small changes in the mainstream is also like where it's at, really.
I think it's both. I think there's a need for all this radical art porn in Europe and throughout the world that has a space at these festivals and is doing screenings. But I also think there is also positive things about mainstream porn. And I think where mainstream porn is right now, I think it's moving in a really good direction, where it's a lot of performer turned directors winning awards. I think they're starting to become more diversity. I think these award shows have a lot of a way to go still, but I
Mm.
think it's definitely going in the right direction, which makes me pretty hopeful about porn as a whole. But also, we're in the middle of a whole pandemic and shooting is so difficult right now. So I think it's porn's a lot of things right now. What do you think?
I think it's a mix of both. Like one of the things, it's so frustrating for me as someone who's in their mid to late 30s being in the sex industry at a time when you have to be so tech savvy.
Mhm.
because people of my age are like just a little bit too old to have grown up with the internet. Like
Yeah,
just
you're
1 or 2 years too old for the internet to be super ingrained in the way we do things. So it's learning all of that. But one of the things that I do really feel has happened is there's been a kind of democratizing of the way we represent ourselves, which is so amazing and something that I didn't see being possible 5 years ago.
mhm.
Like anyone with a phone can be in the top 10% of OnlyFans now.
Yeah, you can shoot a film that's getting into festivals or getting award
Yeah,
nominations on your iPhone now.
exactly. You can be in film festivals, you can be on OnlyFans, you can be on like ManyVids, whatever. Like you can achieve this kind of dominance with your work that was not possible for the average person 5 years ago. And one of the really cool things with that is that you can choose how you represent yourself. And some people are still choosing to go with the slurs and they're still choosing to go with the more anachronistic representations. And good for them.
Yeah,
But
if you want to reclaim that, more power
exactly.
to you.
But if you don't want to do that, you don't have to anymore.
Mhm.
Whereas I think 5, 7 years ago, you really had to.
100%.
Like you were really one of the trailblazers in refusing to be labeled that way.
Yeah, I was very upset.
You were really one of the first.
Yeah, I was just like, because all my influences in porn were about doing things. Like Sasha Grey
Mm.
is my biggest influence by far, and her entire thing in porn was like, oh, I want to do extreme things, but I'm also going to
Yeah.
speak what I'm feeling and talk about the issues in the industry. So I think being from Michigan, I was naive that I was like, oh, everyone's going to be like, oh, that's a good point. We should listen to this girl instead
Yeah.
of like blacklisting me and harassing me online and all this stuff. I was very much like, oh, yeah, people will be like, oh, yeah, why don't we have any trans women at this company? Or why are we calling them slurs that,
Mm.
GLAD and all the other queer organizations are being like, you can't do that. But yeah, I guess I didn't really have that many influences in like a whole TS porn world where I've obviously was influenced by some like trans performers like Drew DeVoe or Toby Hillmeyer who were like doing the queer
Mm.
porn stuff or lesbian porn. But most of my influences were cis. So I feel like I kind of got put in a weird thing where I'm like, I want to do what Stoya is doing or what Sasha Grey is doing. And there's like, oh no, you have to do this weird TS porn that I'm like, I don't want to do any of these things. I don't do any of these things during sex. It's not going to look good. And I think I was
No.
really lucky to have some directors who got what I was doing and being like, okay, I understand what you're doing, but I just feel like what mini vids and clips for sale has done has just opened up the industry so much
Mm.
because there's no gatekeeper telling you what you can and cannot be called. There's no gatekeeper telling you what you can and cannot shoot or how you have to shoot it.
Yeah. And there's so many girls now that are just like they've never shot with a company that are
Yeah.
in the top earners of these like sites. Like many vids, I think one of the top earners is just a girl that does solos, like MILF themed solos with
Hmm.
like a dildo and has never even performed with another person, which is so cool that you can be the top earner on a porn site with literally no one telling you what to do. Like,
It's just so cool. I feel like that's what gives me so much hope about the future of the
yeah.
industry. Is I think there's obviously some scary things with content trade. There's some major issues that have been happening in Vegas with people faking tests and stuff because
Mm,
they feel like they have to consistently be working. And obviously with COVID, there's been
yeah.
a lot of people have gotten COVID in the industry from a bunch of content trade. But I feel like at the same time with all of this, I think it's just like so important that there's not this one director or this one cis guy who's going to tell you, oh no, this is how sex actually works.
Yeah.
Because people would say stuff like that back in the day, you know? like
Oh
on
my god,
set?
the amount of times that I had like so I would always use condoms if someone didn't have a HPV vaccine.
Mhm.
And people would be like, "Oh, but we'll make a lot more money if we
I
do
hate
bareback."
that.
And I was like, "Okay, but I just told you that I'm not gonna do it." And it was like this really subtle pressure of like, "Oh, we'll let you do it, but like you probably won't be invited back."
Yeah, that's like
This
such
kind
an
of
issue.
subtle manipulation that doesn't have as much power anymore because you can make your own content, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I think it's just so different now. I think, especially because we've seen it both ways in the
Mhm.
industry, that I think for so many new performers, it's just unimaginable. Also, like I've interviewed, I think 2 or 3 performers who've only had their careers during the pandemic,
That's
which
really
is
interesting.
so their whole idea of porn is like, oh, well, you do stuff at home and then you build it up and then occasionally you'll get a shoot and you go fly to this place, do a shoot, come back home and continue doing your stuff at home. It's just like
Wow.
so interesting to me because it's so different. Because before,
Mhm.
I feel like the whole mindset was you move to a city, you try to get as many gigs as possible, then you hope you have a career and you can stay there.
It was such a numbers game back
Hmm.
in the day. Like you just had to work for everyone and hope that you got enough traffic that you could like turn it into something.
Yep. Yeah. It's just so crazy how porn's so different. And neither of us have been in this industry for like, I mean, I guess in porn terms, it's been a while for both of us, but in
But
general,
we're
like,
not veterans.
yeah, 8 years in porn. I mean, I guess that's a veteran, but it's very strange to think that you're like not neither of us are 40 yet, and we're like, wow, this industry day and night. But I think it is cool to be part of this whole shift and just
Yeah.
how it's changed so much. So I have 2 questions left for you. Thank
Oh,
you so much, first off, for chatting. It's just so nice to talk to you again. It's been literally 3 years. I think last time I saw you was
yeah.
literally
Thanks, long.
at the festival. And it's so weird to think my biggest issue when I was in Berlin last time was, wow, we can't get a ticket to any screening that we actually have. Every like aisle it has people sitting in it. Like it's just so crazy to think that was my biggest issue pre-pandemic. The last time I was in Berlin, just being like, just too many people want to see porn.
Back in the day, I remember that.
Yeah.
Having to like talk to the organizers and be like, "Hey, don't you think you should make it so that the people in the film should be allowed to see it?"
Yeah. Just such a crazy experience. I really hope that festival can come back and be what it was just because it was so special. Also, I felt like if it continued at that point, they literally needed to like get a small arena. Like there was so many people like that they had like they had 4 different theaters and they were all every single screening was sold out from like
Yeah.
noon until like midnight. It's just so crazy.
I think the problem was like everyone knew it was too small, but no one wanted to leave because back in the day, the porn film festival started before it was cool to do porn film festivals.
Mhm.
So they were the only people that would let us do it there. And now that it's super cool, everyone's like, "Oh, let me host your porn film festival." And we don't want to be like turning our back on the cinema, but also we just don't physically fit.
Yeah, I can't believe the history of that cinema. I recently looked it up. It's crazy. You know, that's the oldest cinema in all of Germany.
Yeah.
Just so crazy that that's the place that there's all this porn memories. But my question is, you've obviously kind of shot porn all over the place. Do you have a specific city or a place you really enjoyed shooting porn? I think like Berlin Porn Film Festival week. I think the energy shooting there is really high for me. Also love shooting in Amsterdam, and then like Vegas week of AVN has like a very similar vibe to Berlin, where it's just like everyone in the world I feel like is there shooting basically.
Yeah, I really love shooting in Berlin. I think just for the pure sake that there is so much happening here all the time, and everyone's kind of expressing themselves in the way that they want, and it's got this real beauty to it. But I would also say, like, I really like working in Chile, because I will say, like, Chile and Latin America have this like real punk DIY spirit that I think is kind of lacking in Berlin. Like, I think if you go to Latin America and you see what's happening there at the moment, it's kind of like what people imagine Berlin was like 30, 20 years ago.
Mm.
Like, there's this real anti-capitalist movement happening there, and it's so creative and it's so unique. And I think yeah, if you ever have the opportunity
Yeah, I'm hoping.
to go to Chile, I really, really recommend you to go and do some more fuck the fascism stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's a dream right there.
You're quite famous there.
Rightfully so. They should be like, there should be like little kids wearing fuck the fascism t-shirts, like it's a soccer club or something. Like, I feel like that's the passion they deserve there. It's just so, yeah.
But I recommend, like, Chelsea, you have a lot of fans in Latin America, so really do go
Yeah.
there. There's a
I
lot
am honestly, if I can get out of California at any time soon, I haven't left my time zone since I've been back from Berlin. So I'm like very ready. Like, even across the country, I haven't been back to Michigan in 3 years. So I'm just like, wow, that's like, in my head, that feels like going to Japan or going to Europe right now, where I'm like 3 hours on a plane. That's crazy. But here's hoping. Like, I've done a few festivals down there, and it seems like there's a really growing porn scene both in Chile, in Brazil. It seems like there's just really a passionate, really
Yeah.
growing thing, which is really exciting. And I think there's like 3 or 4 festivals. I can't remember the name of the festival. There's one festival that goes all through Latin and Central America. That one year it was in Mexico City, one year it was in Rio. I think last year was in Colombia, maybe. But just kind of goes all around. It's all just different porn stuff, which is really
Nice.
cool.
There's
Yeah.
also a queer film festival in Valparaiso.
Oh yeah, that's what is it called? There's like 3 X's in the name, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was
Or
in
the
the last year, I think. I think the Kendall Dreaming Scene might have been in
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to promote it if we're gonna talk.
it.
But yeah, there's a queer porn film festival in Valparaiso. And I think, like, that's just gonna get bigger and bigger, this scene there, because there's a really big anarchist, queer, trans creative scene in that part of the world.
It's gonna be really interesting to see where queer porn continues to spread in the next, 10 years. Because it's really kind of everywhere now. I mean, I'm not aware of any festivals in Africa or really in Asia as a whole, but I'm sure they exist and they're probably gonna start becoming bigger.
Exactly. I was just thinking this the other day, is like, we're so connected with films in Europe, and we're so connected with films in the UK and the US and Latin America, but
Mhm.
I mean, it would just be pure arrogance to assume that there wasn't an equally big scene in North Africa or in Thailand or in China, and we just need to find a way to connect with it.
Yeah, I remember there was someone at Berlin a few years ago trying to start a festival in Hong Kong, which was really interesting.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's eventually going to happen. It's just so interesting to see this whole movement really spread around the world and really become a thing that the whole world's engaging in, which is just, I think, so special to be part of something like that, because yeah, there's just not that many art movements I feel like that truly have that happen.
art horrors taking over the world.
It's really exciting in a way, though, just to be like, wow, there's really people all over the world making porn right now. And yeah,
Right.
that's what really excites me. See, I think that's what always gets me back to feeling positive about porn. I'm like, wow, it's this
Mm,
thing that it unites everyone essentially. Like everyone watches some variety of porn,
yeah.
basically, at least some point in their life. Like it's this like bigger thing that brings us all together. I don't know. I'm gonna go down the whole sentimental thing right now. So I have one final question for you. This is my only like kind of clickbaity question. If you could magically change one thing in porn that would totally be different when you wake up tomorrow, what would it be?
Oh, if I can change one thing in porn.
I can also answer it if you need me to buy time for you. No problem at all.
I think if I could change one thing in porn, it would be to remove the imperative to make money. Because I think so much of the most interesting stuff that we make, whether it's mainstream or art porn or queer porn or like whatever, so many of us have our best ideas just coming from what we think is cool or what we
Mhm.
think is arty or what we think we would love to see. And I think if we could remove the imperative to make profit off our work, God, we would be making so much amazing stuff every single day.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I feel like it just is a world as a whole. If you're just like, let's just remove capitalism, that would solve so many epic
Yeah,
things.
that's right. That's my answer.
I mean, that's a very good answer. See, my answer is always like, oh, I just want content trade to speed up because I'm like, I just want studios to lose power. I just don't want them. But like also abolishing capitalism definitely just speeds that up. So
Exactly.
well, I think that's a really good answer. Do you have any social media links that you want to plug or anything?
I wish I did, but I'm so lazy. I would just say, if you want to follow what I'm doing, the best place would be Twitter, Dion Rossi. And if you're ever into camming and getting a cam show, I'm always on Streammate. So
Oh, can I just mention before we go that your poor name is from Portia de Rossi, and it took me so realized to realize that, and I realized that I'm like, wow, that's really cool.
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much, Dion. It was so great to chat with you.
It was so nice to chat with you as well. I've missed talking to you.
Likewise. Bye, everyone.
Bye.